Good morning all. Almighty God, we acknowledge that we have a responsibility to look after your creation, especially this region we call Barcaldine Regional Council. We are conscious that our decisions are going to affect deeply the people we have come here to serve. Assist us to exercise respect for councillors, staff and for the people of our region. Help us in this meeting to act wisely, justly and intelligently in all our deliberations. Thank you, Lord, for the privilege of both leading and serving, and assist us to do these well. Amen.
Amen.
As well as additional condolences to what was circulated with your agenda. The late Mr. Douglas Stewart Merchant, Mr. Darryl Towell, Mr. Jimmy Coveney of Barcaldine, and Mrs. Kay Miraz of Jericho. That's all the staff. Is there anyone else that unfortunately passed? Just probably don't need this to be in the minutes, but also acknowledge Mr. Rayner, the father of the chair of Rapid, has passed in the last couple of days as well. So sadly, so if we could please mark a moment's silence. Thank you. There are no officers, of course, the council is not present. I note Dan once again for the record is joining us online. I take this opportunity to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land upon which we meet, both past, present and emerging. I now call for declarations, please, of conflicts of interest. If I could please start with Councillor Hughes.
Can I just ask a question about 3.9.2, it is with the area of cattle drive?
3.9.
3.2.9.
3.2.9, yep.
Do I have a conflict there, Mr. Mayor, in your opinion?
Are you a member of the executive of the Harry Redford Cattle Drop Committee?
Probably not. But we only have a president. We don't have anything else.
So under prescribed conflict of interest, I can't think of one. Declarable conflicts of interest would only stand if you're a member of the executive of that committee.
Yeah, but I do business with the Harry Redford Cattle Drive Committee, or council if it's running. So I think there is a grey area there for me.
Well, then in that case, it would be prescribed if you're worried about your business's influence.
I am. So you think it is shut?
Would be if you got a benefit from it.
Yeah, I do. So, Mr. Mayor, I'll declare a prescribed with the Harry Redford Cattle Drive.
Thank you. Anyone?
No.
I believe so, Mr. Mayor. I don't believe so, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
I thought this could take 10 minutes actually.
No. I inform the meeting I prescribe conflict of interest in the following matters as defined by section 150EI of the Local Government Act. The nature of my interest is in the following. 3.1.1, the offer to purchase vacant land in the John Miller Industrial Estate. I have a personal interest in that as I'm considering buying land in there myself. And then 3.2.5, these are all the same conflict. 3.2.5, 3.2.6 and 3.2.7 packages, and 3.2.8, sorry. Package 3, 7, 9 and 10 of the flood damage. A close associate of mine is a tenderer. The name of that close associate is Michael Horman Transport, and the relationship is they are my employer and a client of my sole trader business for this project. And then additionally, 3.2.10 rent by arrangement for road stabiliser. As a close associate of mine is a supplier of road construction plant, hire and operations to council, particularly this piece of plant. And the name of that close associate is Michael Horman Transport, as they are my employer.
Thank you. Councillors and anyone watching, I'd just like to really commend Councillor Arthur there for a very astute declaration around agenda item 311. The discussion and the potential decision around that, you could at first glance think the councillor has no interest in because he's not related to either of the parties, but he very clearly outlined he has a potential interest in wishing to potentially acquire land. His participation in this debate could have clouded future purchases by way of setting the price. That there is an exemplary use of the conflict of interest process in local government. The obvious ones are like Councillor Peoples and Arthur do every meeting of their business, and Councillor Rogers, they're a relative no-brainer. That one there is exactly how conflict of interest is to be handled and managed. It's not the involvement in the decision today would have in no way raised a judgment issue. However, if subsequently an offer arrived, it could have looked very ordinary, and you are to be commended. I wasn't aware of that declaration until you just gave it, and I am impressed with the maturity with which that was handled, so thank you. Councillor Plum.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, a couple here. I'd like to inform the meeting that I have a prescribed conflict of interest in 3.2.7, flood damage package 9, as a close associate in K.S. Welch and Sons or a close family of mine. I'll be leaving the room for that discussion and vote. I also have a prescribed conflict of interest in 3.2.8, flood damage package 10, as the same as a close associate of mine. K.S. Welch and Sons are a close friend of mine, and I'll be leaving the room for that discussion and vote. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Plum, thank you. You have obviously not referenced 325 and 326 because your close associate didn't tender for those works?
That's correct. I don't have any idea if they have or they haven't. I presume they haven't.
I'll come back to it, Councillor. I'm just thinking through the probability that as a tenderer, they've had the opportunity to tender for that and haven't. They would have been notified, as were all other tenderers, about that tender. So the perception could be that even though they didn't submit one back, that you've had. I'm not going to go one way. There's still 5 minutes left here yet, so I'll come to that. Do you have any?
No.
Does any councillor present believe? Well, let's talk about it. Does any councillor believe here that? Can you see where I'm heading here, councillors? On behalf of councillor, to protect you, even though your close associate didn't tender for those, they would have received the tender documentation.
I only know that they tendered by what's in the agenda here.
I know.
So I can only go by what I know here. Everything else is their confidential business.
I agree with Becky, what she's saying, like, there's no way for her to know. The only thing is that there has been, in the past, other councillors have left the room for that reason, so it just might look like why, someone's being extra cautious, extra cautious, whereas Becky's not, I don't know.
I've got another thought.
What?
Mr. Mayor, I don't think we can start.
Sorry, Councillor.
Mr. Mayor, I don't think we can start leaving the room because there's a possibility that someone might have received some tender documents.
You're the one I'm thinking of,
Well, yeah.
councillor, because it's you that's done this in the past. There's been items that you've had the opportunity to quote on that you haven't, but you've still left the room because of that exact view.
But
But he received it.
You personally received it, yes, but you or a close associate under the Act is not differentiated between.
at that time, I was probably considering tendering on the document. Whereas I don't think Councillor Plum, you know, I don't think any councillor should have to leave the room on the assumption that maybe they did get a tender or two, if there's no tender come in. It's a tough one.
I'll say at the outset, I don't want you to go. I never want councillors to leave the room. The more people we have making a decision in the room, the better. I just don't want you to be, I just want to make sure that everybody individually, because it ultimately rests with you as you're the decision maker here. If you're comfortable, I'll back you 100%, as I've backed every councillor with a conflict of interest resolution. You will. It's your decision. I just wanted you to be aware that it is on identical work. They definitely would have got the package. And even though that's not you, the Act doesn't differentiate, because the reason you have to declare an interest because of a close associate is the fact that there could have been the perception of information sharing. But I mean, they haven't submitted. So ultimately, you're not making a decision here today in respect to package 3 or 7 that could benefit them or not, because they haven't even submitted. So I'm comfortable if you are. I just wanted to really tease that out and put it right on the record. That way then it's, that we haven't just glossed over it.
Through you, Mr.
Sorry,
No.
councillor.
You can go first.
I agree, like, I don't believe it's a conflict of interest, but as you said, council, I feel like councillor Peoples has left the room so similar, like very similar, and that could just look bad, but I would also support Becky that she doesn't have, I don't believe she really has to.
Councillor Arthur, you find yourself tied up in these things all the time. What's your thoughts?
I would probably declare a leave because I'm making a decision to benefit someone that my close associate competes in work for. But my initial comment was I disagree with Councillor Plum about not knowing, because it draws potential prescribed conflicts of interest. We have an obligation to ask a question, I guess, so that the council can be informed as to whether you do have a conflict or not. Yeah.
Councillor Plum, that's an interesting point. This first point that Councillor Arthur raised there are competitors of your close associate directly in that decision.
But Mr Mayor, Councillor Arthur is an employee.
It doesn't matter. You're a close associate, so you're bound by the Act to be mindful of. So whatever causes the relationship doesn't matter. You're both deemed a close associate. He is by way of employment, you are by way of relation. But the Act still comes back to the point that you're both a close associate. So there's the same responsibility upon you to clear that interest. Otherwise it exists until such time as you clear it.
Mr Mayor, can I just make a further comment to what I said for Councillor Plum? In abundance of caution, if it was me, I'd probably leave, even though I don't think, and what I said before that I don't think you do have, I probably would leave if it was me. So I just want to clarify that.
All right, we've had a really good discussion around this. Ultimately, it is only the responsibility of other councillors present to point out whether a councillor may have overlooked it. The decision rests with you, councillors. So,
Mr Mayor, I think I will leave. So I will also add package 3 and 7 to those prescribed. Thank you.
Councillor Peoples, do you have any declarable conflicts of interest?
I don't think so, Mr Mayor. No.
Councillor Gleeson,
Don't believe so, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Hanson,
I don't believe so, Mr
Councillor
Mayor.
Arthur,
No, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Plum.
Mr Mayor, I would like to inform the meeting that I have a declarable conflict of interest in 3.6.3, being the Director's Report, and with the Shire Roads QRA report. As a contractor involved in this is a close family member as previously prescribed in conflicts of interest. I would like the councillors to allow me to stay in the room for the balance of the report, as I believe this report is very beneficial to me. And should this area of the report be discussed, I will be leaving the room.
Thank you, Councillor. I move that Councillor Plum be allowed to remain in the room for the discussion and choose to remove herself should we have to interrogate that section of the report. Second is Councillor Rogers. Those in favour? Carried 6-0. Thank you, Councillor Plum. Any further? Councillor?
No, that's what.
That's the only one. Councillor Rogers, any new ones?
No, Mr Mayor, nothing new. I just informed the meeting that I have the existing declarable conflict of interest in 3.6.5, the Aramac District Manager's Report, and 3.6.7, the Progress Report, as defined in 150M of the Local Government Act. The nature of the interest is the Lake Gun Sculpture Trail, and so I do wish to participate in receiving the report. However, I acknowledge that councillors must
367.
determine 365 and 367.
Council, does anyone wish to change the standing resolution where allowing Councillor Rogers to remain in the room for the receipt and discussion of those reports? There being nobody, does any councillor present believe any other councillor present may have overlooked a declarable conflict of interest? There being none, I now move to confirmation of minutes. Can I have somebody move the minutes of the 31 October general meeting be received? Councillor Rogers, Plum, seconded Councillor Hanson. Those in favour? Carried. 7-0. Any errors, omissions or alterations were picked up? That being the case, can I have somebody please move that they be received? Adopted. Councillor Gleeson, seconded Councillor Plum. Those in favour? 7-0. You got that, just a slight change there, Deb. There must have been a copy and paste there, and instead of received, adopted. Does any councillors or staff present have any petitions in the correct proper form? No. Okay. Agenda item 311, offer to purchase vacant land, John Miller Industrial Estate. Thank you, Councillor Arthur. Jenny, I believe this is your report. Thank you very much.
To Mr Mayor, yes, and it's quite self-explanatory. We had the land listed for sale with one agent. We've now listed with the second agent. They're the ones that people have actively been going and asking, and they presented this offer to the real estate agent. So it's as it is there, it's what they've offered, and the real estate agent, which is also provided with the report, provided some information on land that had been recently sold.
Okay, questions?
That's the box that I mentioned. 36 and 33.
So how to sell this is cleared by way of the fact that the land has previously been offered for public tender or auction. So we've ticked that because it's been released previously. And the ability to set the price is because even though we've got a list price of that, we have received an offer to purchase that land previously for not less than 30,000. Is that right?
That's correct.
So, okay, so all our legislative ticks, we're all happy with that. Jenny, you're happy with that?
I was happy with that, Mr Mayor, yes.
Shane?
It's been relisted with the real estate agent.
Yep. Dan, as far as you're concerned, all happy? Let the record show that the Regional Corporate Services is nodding.
And I move that we go into closed session for a bit, please, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, I expected someone to do that. That's why I went and got my book. We'll be to section 254, but I'm just wondering which part. I reckon I should know this part off the top of my head by now. G, we use it fairly often. Matters affecting
Commercial.
Commercial matter.
Someone's got my right book.
Mr Mayor, I think it's red.
You've got
I think
a
red on the
I don't think it's this one. Thank you. I'd say G, yes. Negotiations relating to a commercial matter involving the local government from which a public discussion would be likely to prejudice the interests of the local government. You happy with that, Councillor? Do I have a seconder? Councillor Hanson, is there any opposition? Those in favour? 6-0. Councillors, do I have a procedural resolution to defer decision on this agenda item 311 till a later stage today? Councillor Peters moves, Councillor Plum seconds. Those in favour, 6-0. Could I ask Councillor Arthur please be invited to rejoin the chamber?
Yes, that is.
This is the Bible. Just for your benefit, given your declared interest, we've deferred a decision on that pending a little bit more advice to a later stage today, and if we don't get that advice, councillor, it may be deferred for another day.
Yep.
Until another day. 321, expressions of interest to lease the hangar. Jenny, very detailed report. The letter from Ergon speaks to itself. Do you have anything to add before I go to questions?
No, Mr. Mayor. This hangar is supposedly empty because we don't have any lease agreements on it. Backwards and forwards, someone came forward and the authority came through and someone has now come forward again asking if they can lease that.
Questions? Councillor Plum.
Mr. Mayor, the state of the hangar, is it in good condition? Is it in operable condition? Is it?
Yes, it is functional. It was being used by another organisation, and at the time when we were putting the leases in place, it was because they weren't the owner of it, they couldn't sign a lease agreement, and Ergon didn't want a lease agreement because they don't utilise it. So it went backwards and forwards for quite some time before this. Eventually they relinquished it back to council, the ownership.
Do I have a mover?
Oh, sorry, so through
Oh,
you,
sorry.
so just to clarify, we didn't have a lease agreement.
There's no current lease agreement on that, Mr. Mayor, because it's supposedly empty.
No, but did we have one with Ergon?
No.
Oh, so they just used it, but they didn't actually have a formal arrangement.
To Mr. Mayor, the formal agreements for the leases at the airport, all those hangars were constructed there and have been there for many years. Leases have only been in place for the last, I think this is the 3rd year when we introduced that fee to the fees and charges because these are constructed on council land. So prior to that, yes, when they had an aircraft in this area, but they have not used had an aircraft in this area for many, many years. So when it came out that council wanted them all to have lease agreements and pay an annual fee was when the conversation started around, well, we don't have use for it, we don't use it. But there was another company obviously storing a plane in it at the time who wanted to have a lease, sign a lease.
For
but
themselves.
They weren't the owner of that.
But so the historical, forget the formal structured arrangements, historically Ergon they used that hangar.
Yeah.
They don't need it anymore.
No.
And this instrument from them is just formally saying, well, we're out.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, just previously, I guess, Ergon and other companies, they just built the hangars themselves and probably that's why we didn't have a lease. They are basically, is that what happened? Did they build their own hangars or?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I believe that's what was the case,
so
and
it was classed as their hangar and we probably didn't have a lease agreement
GDO was the same.
until recently, yeah.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, every hangar out there was built on council land, and that's going back. I couldn't even think because previous doctors owned one that has been gone for many years, and so yeah, historically people must just be allowed to do that, and that was when it was not council didn't own it at the time. So it was when council bought that land, when it was reserved for airports, and then council bought it a couple of years ago, and that's when it was decided we should start putting in place lease agreements for those hangars there to make people aware that, structures are on council land.
Sorry, I didn't mean to rush that through. Does anyone have
No,
any
no,
questions on that?
I generally have long pause in between my thoughts.
I wasn't even watching, to be honest, councillors. I was being quite rude from the chair. I was looking at my agenda moving on.
So,
Councillor Plum.
Mr Mayor, obviously because it's on council land, that's why we're leasing it. So can they purchase it? No?
Ergon, no. So Ergon doesn't want to lease this. They want to make sure it's very clear they're giving it back. So we're asking if anyone else out there wants
I
to.
know that,
Yeah.
so it becomes
No
our
asset.
Our asset.
A gifted asset.
So if someone was to come along and want to buy it, can't do it.
Well, not unless we sold it for removal because the land's ours. It's all one strata
It's
title.
because it's council land, it's got to be leased.
Yeah. And to be fair, you probably wouldn't, it's not that invaluable an asset, I wouldn't be sure that we'd want to sell it yet. Because if we ever changed the configuration of the airport, those hangars may need to move, they need, you know what I mean? Like, whereas if you sold them and say you even subdivided the hangar bay out so people could privately own them, it could end up a thorn in our side. So we're better off leasing it and having full control over it. Especially if we mention in the lease that it's at council sole discretion as to whether that is the location of the hangar or not, you know. If we chose to move the hangars to another location to allow for a terminal expansion, so long as the hangar exists, well, the lease can continue. Not that I'm foreshadowing that that'll happen anytime soon, but we have talked about terminal upgrades and
Yeah.
it's only just big enough for its current usage, so a substantial improvement in the volume of traffic through Barcaldine would necessitate some upgrades to that facility. All right, Councillor Gleeson.
I move the motion.
Councillor Beagle seconds it. Those in favour? 7-0. 322. Queensland Country Winds Association Barcaldine Branch. Once again, Jenny, your report.
Mr Mayor, it's self-explanatory. They're celebrating 100 years and they're looking for some assistance to promote and hold an activity open to all the public and have some merchandise to celebrate the occasion. A logo has been designed and that has been awarded, which will go on to the marks of details.
Questions? Yes. Councillor Plum moved. Councillor Gleeson has a question.
Mr Mayor, I'm in favour, but I just want to ask one question. There was a 100-year function in Alpha a couple of years, last year, last year I think it was. Was there funds allocated to that branch, do you know?
Mr Mayor, I have to
Did they ask? Do you have the answer?
I'm not sure. I don't think they asked. I don't remember seeing they asked. And
See, they probably just knew the $500 one and they probably just asked and it would have gone through or we would have not even, if we didn't read down to the bottom of Damien's report, probably we would pick up that it had gone.
That brings me back to the next part of the question, Mr Mayor. I think it's a great organisation. One part of our Shire has had the 100-year function and asked for a very small amount.
I don't even know that they asked for any. I'm just saying if they asked for up to 500, we wouldn't have known. I don't know what they asked for.
I just want to ask the question. Thank you.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Rogers. Any further debate? Those in favour? 7-0. 323. This, I think, could be Karen's report.
Yes. The report is pretty detailed for what they're asking. So it's a orphans lunch, Christmas lunch. So anyone who's not travelling home for Christmas, so rather than spending the day on their own, Alpha Tourism want to provide a Christmas lunch and would like some funds to go towards that. Previously, or last year, they prepared 48 meals. 46 of the community came in to Peak Till's Morning Melodies Cafe and had it together, and a couple of meals were delivered out to the homes. They are also given a small gift on the day. So it's just about including everyone, so no one spends Christmas alone, basically. I think it's a really lovely thing that they do, and I'd support them, and I'd like council to be able to support them further with their endeavours.
Questions?
Through you, Mr Mayor, I'm happy to move that we support it, but just before, I think there's been a mistake made on the assessment of request, because it actually says it should be ticked yes, there's no outstanding debt, because the no has been ticked that they have an outstanding debt and they don't have an outstanding debt.
Just on page 1.
Just page 1, but just to make sure that like
Technically,
someone
they're
reading
ineligible.
the agenda
Okay.
would think that they would.
Yeah,
I can understand
It's
how-
just a mistake,
No,
it's just a tick
no,
mistake.
It's a bit like the yes, no
They
vote.
don't. Yeah,
They would have ticked no, there's no debt, instead of realising no,
Yeah.
there is no outstanding debt, you know, I can
Yes.
understand, that makes perfect sense. But surely, well,
because
we're both being
down
very
further-
presumptive that there's no debt. Is
No,
there no
there
debt?
isn't,
No.
because it down further, where the club has filled it out, they have no debt.
Yeah.
So, it
That's
says
their,
there's none.
that's their opinion though, is there definitely no debt from the outside? Questions? So it's moved Councillor Rogers, seconded Councillor Plum. Any opposition? Any discussion?
Probably just a question about their ability to fund it themselves. I'm not against it, but without a copy of the bank statement, I just assume, I guess, like the rest of us, that they don't have the funds to be able to do it themselves.
They don't have a lot of funds through years there because they just haven't been a lot of fundraising opportunity for tourism there. And normally it's come out of the pocket of private residents, and this is the first year that they've actually asked for assistance to put this on.
I assume that, Mr Mayor, but it's just sometimes nice to have the proof and the confidence to say that I agree it's money well spent.
The box, they must have provided their bank statements initially,
Yeah, I think they have.
because they rank.
It's not on my hard copy here either, I'm sorry.
No, because not through you, Mr Mayor, normally I thought there was a box there that says
Shifted it.
whether it's moved or an old form or something, or
I can try and get that sent over and.
Look, I note Councillor Arthur's point, I'm happy to move with this now. The concept behind this is one that you couldn't support more broadly. Whether people celebrate Christmas Day for religious reasons or as a holiday with family or as an excuse to not have to work for a day, doesn't matter. Doing any day alone when the vast majority of the community right the way around the world, let alone around Australia, is celebrating a day of festivities, can often lead to a bit of loneliness and despair. And I'm in no way affiliated with this group. Obviously I haven't declared any conflict of interest, but for somebody to take the time away from their families to organise something like this on that day for a couple of hours, to bring some joy to, you know, most of these people are elderly, but not all. There's a number of, younger people involved here who are just, not all with a disability, but some with disabilities. That's a really special day. That's as special as organising one 3 weeks before at lunchtime, That's a really commendable thing, and it doesn't mean that it has to happen everywhere, and the work required in putting this on is immense, and a tremendous commitment, and those who can do that, I think they sit among the pantheon of the great people that reside out broadly within our community. Councillor Peters.
Karen, the meal's free.
Meals are free. There's
you.
no charge to anyone who attends.
Thank you.
It was suggested that they asked for a donation, gold point donation, but they said no, it's what they want to provide back to the community because the community supports throughout the year. Just further to that, it's also good for our new employees that don't have leave potentially, so going to work through Christmas and have nowhere to go, don't know anyone, so they can also come and spend a few hours and have lunch with some of the local communities.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bless you.
Can I please put that to the vote? 7-0.
Sorry.
Oh, yeah. Okay, Dean, I might throw to you now to work through the support material. Councillors have workshopped this our previous meeting clearly, but this is our first ever formal budget amendment where we are actually going to formally, with council's consent today and maybe some alterations, I don't know, I haven't heard of any, formally amend our approved budget to reflect movements, changes in both revenue and expenditure, and some clarity around not only projects but grant funding. I think it will leave our books in a more, or we will allow our books to more accurately reflect both our current position but also our forecast position. I'm looking forward to perhaps or potentially one more of these at the January meeting where we will have a very clearer, a much clearer 6-month position, but obviously a lot of the work that's gone into this, Dan, is because we are substantially further than 1 quarter through the year now, so if we were suspecting the shock, well, we might have pulled back in some areas. But anyway, I'll flick over to you before we go to the formal debate on this.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I today am presenting the Budget Review 1 budget amendment. So what council officers have reviewed the revenue and expenditure items as well as the statements to date for this financial year and looked at balancing the actuals versus the budget as it's progressed. The period of review was for 1 July to 31 October, and under section 170 of the local government regulations, it provides for council to be able to amend its budget any time during the financial year. So on the back of some additional revenue and some favourable outcomes from the roads and transport revaluation, we are looking to wipe the deficit that we budgeted for in June and return a small surplus of $32,000. I'll just go through the adjustments that we're recommending. In financial services, a federal assistance grant has come in prior to the end of the financial year. That has seen also quite a large increase than what was expected in the budget papers. So we're looking to increase the budget there from 10.4 to 11.8 million. That's a variance of an additional $1.4 million in operational revenue. The community care program, we're adjusting the budget slightly there to reflect a new agreement that was signed in July. That's for the Home Assist Secure agreement, and it's increased from 133,000 to 149,000, and that's, while it is additional revenue, it's also additional expenditure. It's shown in the second table. In the capital grants and contributions, there is some additional funding come through there that wasn't initially budgeted for, which relates to the W4Q and LRCIP3 programs, which have been carried forward. So that the funding that has come through there has been reflected in the budget now, which is a good addition to the budget there for those carried forward projects. In the expenditure space, increasing in a few areas there, the 60 Better program has been increased to reflect more realistic expectations of where that program is going to go in 23-24. As a result, as I mentioned, of the revaluation for transport and road assets and also the indexation of our water sewage building asset classes, there has been some adjustments there to depreciation for the year, which is a small reduction overall of $280,000. As a result of the increase, I mentioned the Home Assist Secure program, the Harry Redford Cattle Drive budget line, we've made recommending an amendment there at the moment that is subject to a report further in the agenda. The larger than forecast increase in insurance has also been reflected, and then we've had some contingencies we've put into the budget as well on our water sewage spaces, which is a result of we know we need to do additional work in those spaces. We've got a couple at the water treatment plants. There is some additional work there. We're just working out what that program is, and also on the waste around the Barcaldine landfill, working up an operational program there as well. So once we have better line of sight of what those two programs look like, with those reports we will back to council to actually tap into those contingencies. So They have been budgeted for, but they're not to be spent without a council resolution, a further council resolution. In engineering services, with council bringing that additional, bringing elements of that service now internally with some internal resourcing, we are reflecting the additional labour cost of that. I should note that while we are increasing the labour cost in engineering services, we do expect that there'll be offsets throughout the rest of the business on where those projects were formerly done externally, so whether that be in communities, community facilities, or across in our roads programs. In addition to these changes, the opening balances and the financial statements have been adjusted to reflect those of the unaudited financials for 22-23. This provides quite an increase in the cash line in the balance sheet. Obviously, we were expecting in the budget to not receive that federal assistance grant prior to 30 June. It came in a couple of days before the end of the month, and so you can see there's quite a large increase in the cash when we look at that statement. The other point of note is, as I mentioned before, the adjustments that we've made to these adjustments that have been made will see the operating surplus ratio also improve from a 1.4% deficit to a 0.6 surplus, or $32,000, which means we're now meeting the target for that financial sustainability ratio. We just have a look at the statements quickly. If we look at the balance sheet or the statement of financial position, as I mentioned, the cash balance is in a lot more positive position. Also coming in prior to the end of the year was the impacting that was some of the prepayments for the flood damage programs. Receivables was in a lot better position than expected, with a couple of major payments from, I think they were from Main Roads coming in towards the end of the year. Contract assets has been adjusted to reflect what contract assets we actually had, which was largely related to the Main Roads contracts. They've been now paid, I believe. The asset adjustment sees an increase in assets there by about 30 million overall, increasing our carrying value of our property, plant and equipment to 406 million. And also contract liabilities has been adjusted with all that flood damage monies coming in prior to the end of the year. We've got some obligations obviously tied to those, so of what we have to deliver now that we've received the money. So that is just reflecting those in those statements there. If I jump across to the long-term financial sustainability forecast, which is one of the last statements there. That now shows that for 24 and 25, in the budget, those two operating surplus ratios were not meeting the target. They are now meeting the target, which now means that our entire 10-year forecast for the financial sustainability is showing council meeting its targets for the asset stability ratio, the net financial liability ratio, and also now the operating surplus ratio. So a positive outcome there.
That's an understatement. That's the biggest understatement you've given since you started working here, and you're known for understatements. I think we need to draw a little bit of attention to that fact that we are now meeting the local government departments imposed, and the same that applies to every local government in Queensland's targets for sustainability by all three matrices for the entire 10-year financial forecast, which all of us know is rubbish. Anything outside of 3 is a guess, but we use the same methodology that every other local government uses. It's imposed on us, not self-imposed, and we are meeting all 3 sustainability matrices. Measures.
If I can add there, the Mayor's right. From a statewide perspective, this council is performing extremely well, and the hard work and decisions made has actually given a very strong platform going forwards.
And if I can labour that point, then allow you to finish, Dan, sorry, but at times it's probably felt a little bit disjointed and clunky over the last 3 years as we get all of that stuff to a position where we can say that. We've been fortunate to receive substantial grant funding and an increase in grant funding. Like the increase in FAGs has definitely benefited us, and look at the difference from a budgeted deficit to a now budgeted surplus with reserves on the way. But you still don't get there if you waste that money on something that's not required. There's been substantial operational savings that our officers have done through the work they did with QTC, but some of it happened piecemeal. It wasn't a bulk, wholesale, overnight change. But the good news about that is it's just allowed a bit of integrity in the budget, in that these things are not sugar hits, overnight fixes. They're fixes that have been done, whether it's been through a methodical process or not. The end result has put the budget, and at times it has been methodical and at other times it's been happenstance, but we're now in a position where the budget is structurally repaired through both external funding that's now locked in terms of FAGs, that's a locked commitment, and through operational savings that we found. So officers and councillors, you deserve a massive pat on the back for doing something. I can't even undersell the political pain that you felt through increasing our rates. No council in Queensland's increased rates as substantially as we have over the last 3 years. Not every year. Some have been bigger in 1 year, but we've done it every year to ensure that every element of the budget is swinging or carrying its weight. We're not relying on revenue to increase in one key area. We've looked at that across the board, and now we're looking at amending a budget that's showing surpluses into the future, which is not about putting money in the bank to sit there and do nothing. It's therefore to ensure that A, our workforce can be paid, that's the number one thing, and two, that we have the money to support the community, whether it be with critical infrastructure such as water, sewage and roads, future community infrastructure, the whole gamut of things, that if we have our own money, we can maintain some independence around our decision making rather than tweaking our capital works program to suit whatever state or federal government grant programs released, rather than saying, well, this is what our community needs, this is what our council needs, we'll build what we want. We can do that when we have $30+ million in the bank. So, sorry, I'm getting back off my soapbox there, over to you, but well done to all of the team in finance, in operations, and to councillors who've made the tough decisions to put our budget where I anticipate we're going to adopt it to go today.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for that. A compliment to the team. Yeah, they have been working extensively. I will point out that the significant increase in the federal assistance grants played a large part in this success. Certainly has been a strong effort by the team, both not just in finance either. The works teams played a part in this and looking at and understanding what they're spending and putting some controls in place. I wasn't going to go through the budget support report for the budget versus actuals. I'll take questions if there is any questions. I do note that from what Council has seen in the workshop, we updated the values to be the 31st of October from the 30th of September. And there are some areas of the budget, of the actuals that you'll see there's been some major increases with, which I'm happy to take questions. So the officer's recommendation today is that we receive the amended budget support report for income and expenditure, detail in the attachments, and amend the following budget documents adopted on June 27 to 2023. So amending the statement of income and expenditure, the statement of financial position, the statement of cash flows, and the statement of changes in equity. Also adopt the amended long-term financial forecast as outlined in the attachments, and also the amended relevant measures of financial sustainability for the next 9 financial years. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. I now open the floor for questions. Councillor Rogers.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was just wondering with the amendment to the costs of waste, I feel like maybe that's going to need more. Have we got any more that we can put into that? Because what's happening at the refuse, I feel like we will still need more than that $200,000 extra.
Some of the capital, so it won't be expenses as such, so.
This is the operating side of the budget, so we can appropriate on the capital side. further. And remember, the 200 that's going to water and 120 that's going to works, it's only been parked there to allow for it, so we can move that. It doesn't have an allocation. There's really 520,000 there that can be moved around operationally to where it's required. Would that's correct there?
Yeah, that's correct. We've allocated that just for operational activities. So by the time we actually have some rubber hit the road there, we're probably still only going to have 6 months of the year left. So the idea that we need to worry about the entire financial year cost of that is more of a next budget problem at this stage. But certainly trying to understand what those costs are going to be, we've just allowed a contingency there for now. And water may not come to the fruition of what we're expecting, and also that one in administrations is there as well, to be transferred if needed.
And I guess if we just if we tease out what that 6 month statement you just made looks like, it's say just if I can pick on one element of operations, it'll obviously increase at the waste facility under some of the things that I've seen foreshadowed. It'd be the placement of a staff member there in a Monday to Friday position, or whatever the hours look like. Let's just say we do that. It is most likely now going to be post Christmas, so we'll only have 6 months of that person's salary to go, not a 12-month salary. So obviously the 24-25 budget will have a bigger hit.
Use that to have a more accurate amount.
That's right. Better budget planning for 24-25 because they'll have a monthly figure to work on.
There's a lot of work to go in to get that
Yeah.
police scope for council.
Councillor Peoples.
No, I'm good, thanks, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Gleeson.
I'm good. Just one question, and it's very trivial. What's the highlighted green? Dan?
Is that in the budget versus actual support report against each of the items?
Yes.
They're the actual items that have had a budget amendment. So the actual line in the budget.
That's the dedicated amendment. So if you started on the very bottom, you can see depreciations is highlighted in green, and that's to draw yours and the community's attention to the areas of the budget that have got a direct amendment. Councillor
Thank you for your report.
Hanson.
All good, thanks, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Hart.
Mr Mayor, our budget review didn't go into looking at capital projects and that.
Dean, I was about to answer there, but I'm going to let you go to this because I think we're doing that in 6 months, but you go again.
No, we haven't gone into the capital at this stage, Councillor Arthur. We were looking to do that more of a 6 month review. But there wasn't, during the review, we did touch on it with the officers to look at that, but there wasn't any additional budget items at this stage or adjustments to the current budget.
And
But
there
we just
was
looked at operational for now.
just on that, there was a significant number of projects that were funded by 2 streams. One was LRCI 4, and we at that stage hadn't received approval for those projects that we had submitted. And whereas we have now, is that right, Dan? So there was even we were nervous to start scoping for example, the cross-loading facility at Alpha was funded by LRCA 4. It's budgeted to happen this year, but if we had gone and started a big heap of work on it, and then they said it wasn't eligible because to pick on it, it was one they kept pushing out, saying,
Through you, Mr Mayor, that's not my concern. My concern is the carryover projects from 2023.
sorry.
Okay, and other big ticket items that were touched on generically when we spoke about water and waste. But we're $2 million overspent there, and we've got no clear idea of when and how much it's going to cost us to finish some big ones.
That's right.
I'm talking this, that's what we need to refocus on the police scope. That's a discussion.
But for that 6 monthly review, we need that financial and time information. And where that money's coming from, because I see some of it has got different funding streams, but I would say councils don't cop the most of it.
Well, the STP had some components that were funded externally. There was a LGGSB component and a Works for Queensland. Both of those elements have been acquitted. So the Works for Queensland, from memory, was the connection to the Showgrounds racetrack. That's been finished, completed and acquitted for, God knows, the tank line will be nearly cracked and dried before it gets water in it probably. And there was
What was the same?
Sorry.
What was 600 funding as well?
there was water, but most of the purpose given for the loan that we secured from QTC was the STP, so the vast majority of that is council funds, yes. I'm thinking that the connection to the showgrounds, that was Works for Queensland round 3, I reckon,
Yeah, I thought that was an earlier one.
much earlier, yeah. It did be 2 financial
But
years
just
old.
like the particular big ones, the Acacia Street bore with 568,000 over there. Sewage treatment plant stage 1, 475, sewage treatment plant, treatment 595,000. And even plant, plant replacement with 500 grand over there.
We are, although I do anticipate, so I've got it flagged here on my list to talk about later in the meeting, that there's substantial decisions, including the one that we made at the last meeting for the street sweeper. The delivery timeframe on that's 11 months. So one of the notes that I've got is to ask officers to update the plant replacement project line item to reflect the delivery times that are attached to the decisions we made. So if we're buying things, making decisions this financial year, but the actual receivable is out, that will lower substantially that figure very quickly. So from memory, that was 400,000, 370 something thousand plus GST. So that would wipe straight out of that variance. That'd bring that back by just one item would come back to 130,000.
And that goes to my next point, Mr Mayor, like for our 6 monthly review, if that's when we're going to do the capital projects, like, and while we're in ordinary business and it's budget.
Yeah, most definitely.
Like just the information, like in the project planning report later on, like particularly for those carryover projects, like we've got expected start and completion dates of the 30th of the 9th, 23, the 30th of the 6th, 23. I question the accuracy, and then just giant gaps. I question the accuracy of some of that information. But if we can deal with that in the next budget review, would be appreciated.
And I think probably the thing that'll help us there, and it'll certainly change the variance column a little bit, is to understand whether the committed column, Dean, in that the committed costs, whether there's any double ups in there, whether some of that has actually been cleared out, what that committed column entails, I guess.
Some of that committed column, while it does include, I don't think there's any double ups, Mr Mayor, but I would note that the budget at the moment for plant is based on net. So when the budget for a mower is 100 grand, for example, that is including the disposal of the old one and the cost of the new one is a net value. So while it is $500,000 over, I don't expect it to remain that because there is a number of items there that are to be sold. And as they're sold, that will bring down that $500,000 figure.
Well, I guess that's one reason why I picked on the street sweeper, because it's a large lump of money with no revenue to come back in, but it's not going to happen this year either, so that's as good as not there, isn't it?
Yeah, but I think what Councillor was referring to is the carry forward plant program, not the current year program.
Right, sorry. Yes, he is. You're looking at 22-23 program, aren't you? No.
Yeah, 22, 23.
Yeah. All right. Excuse me, Councillor, please.
Just so that I can get my head around the figures a little bit better, not that it's operational, I imagine, but when we look across at the employees' expenses and we've got HR management costs, 141% at this point in time. Is that 141% over the year's budget and we're only 4 months into it, that particular line?
Councillor?
It's in the expenses line.
Page 54.
Yes, yes, Councillor, that is, that one is I noted in the budget workshop. There is some journals to be done with some funding some expenditure going to the wrong places. But there is a whole lot of training costs that have gone to that number. That should have gone to the training number. So that's why the training number looks rather low at the moment. So that will offset and reduce that figure.
Thank you.
Councillor Rogers.
Some of the insurances, Dan, are quite high, like for the time of the year, but I'm assuming that's probably just because there's one payment per year.
That's right.
Yeah, and then there won't be any more until,
Next financial year, that's correct,
yeah.
councillor.
Any further questions? I will move that council receives and then amends as is identified on the screen and in our agenda. I will not read that resolution because we'll be here for a month. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Hanson? Debate? Those in favour? 7-0. Budget is amended.
I mentioned that that's the first time you've done it as a council to amend a budget.
Is, we've done it on
That's a good
individual
milestone.
line items before, but to amend the operation, we've never amended the operation budget. We've never amended capital projects. All right,
It's not here. Excuse me, Dan, did you?
No, we're just letting, no.
councillors, just hold. I might skip 4 agenda items and work through, so councillor Plum, you come back in, councillor Arthur, you stay out. Sorry, our engineers haven't joined us, so I'm going to leave the flood damage packages until after morning tea. If someone notifies Richard that it can be 10:30, please. We will go to agenda item 3210, the rent by arrangement for a new Caterpillar RM400 road stabiliser.
You've got me to carry on stuff. You want Bob here or?
If we need Bob, otherwise let's go. It's his report, but
Bring Bob in.
You want me to get Bob?
That'd be
Or are you
fine.
going to text him?
but we'll start. Right, the report here outlines a couple of things, the clear offer from Hastings, as best as can be gleaned, because it's not just click on a button and see what stabiliser costs have been, because they get journaled to all sorts of different places depending on road maintenance, capital works, external capital works, carry a whole area. It's not like they only operate in one area of their business. So identifying to date what our stabiliser costs have been has been a bit of a feat. You note there in that report that they commenced back, they've gone back as far as the 8th of March 21, so that's a reasonable period of time to give you an estimate or an idea of, not an estimate at all, that's the actuals that have been identified. Now, please don't hang your hat on that. If you were to uncover 1 or 2 more, it would simply be because it's not as easy to identify, or it may have been built with something else. But anyway, that shows you that in that time, until the 14th of the 8th this year, in external hiring costs for a stabiliser, we've spent 1.048 million. That includes the transportation of it in some cases. In other cases, that's obviously missing, so there's probably a higher cost than that, to be fair, but that's what's been identified. That means we've used it out of the 889 days from the 8th of March, a total of 190 days, which is over an average of 5.5 a month, or 66 a year, 67 a year. I may seem saying out loud what you could.
30.
Sorry.
30.
Sorry, I'm only reading the report, but the maths not work.
It's been on average about 30.
Oh, sorry, 30,000. Sorry, I'm thinking it's 30 days a month. Bear in mind that the only thing I'll say at the outset is that because we haven't had it internally, we have only used it where it has been required under a construction approach. So where we're doing a TMR job that calls for it, or where we're doing one of our own seal, compact and seal jobs, it hasn't been used for ordinary maintenance, as could necessarily be the case if we had it sitting in one of our own depots. It's been used on a essential use only basis to this point. So let's break this discussion into 2 parts for simplicity, and let's break it into, are we comfortable to acquire, and then let's break it into the method. If we agree to move forward with the acquisition, then we'll affirm whether it's rent by or buy outright. So we can have the let's have it or not have it discussion first. Councillor Rogers.
Well, firstly, yeah, I'm in favour of purchasing or,
Okay.
you know, acquiring.
Acquiring it, yep.
So,
Councillor Plum? Could I have a bit of quiet, councillor officers? Let Councillor Plum be heard. Councillor Plum, I've given you the call, don't take it off yourself.
Yeah, so I'm quite happy to move forward. Would like, just waiting to hear what other officers have to say about it.
Yep.
To, yeah.
But that's a very good point. Kerry, I said I was going to come to you before I went to the officers and I didn't, sorry.
Sorry to go, Mr.
Do you have any comments to add about this? Sorry, I meant to open with you and I've moved on.
No, the only thing that is not covered in this report are the actual maintenance costs. It is substantial, but substantial operator maintenance required on these machines.
Yeah.
And we've got to come up with a safe operating procedure because it requires the operator to get under the machine on a daily basis. And it could be large 100-kilo rocks and debris captured up underneath. They have to inspect the actual the hammers and replace the hammers as required. So, you know, they wear out fairly quickly. So it's just we've asked Roadtech, who have several of these machines, for some costings for their daily maintenance.
And the daily maintenance in terms of, it's not only just the checking, the offer covers the servicing of everything but the ground engaging equipment.
Yes.
So it would be not only just the inspection but also the cost of the
Replacing those hammers and
Yeah.
ground engaging.
anything, any part of it. And you know, you wouldn't have to replace a tyre short of a disaster, but even the tyres would be covered by council.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Whereas the engine, hydraulics, every other part of the component is, the price to service that is covered by the agreement from the other. So it wouldn't be outfitters needed even to do that. It'd be the responsibility of Hastings to service the machine
Yes.
as is where is.
That's correct.
Just to add to that, Mr Mayor, I've actually worked on a stabiliser and you're looking at least 2 to 3 hours per day for 2 people to change your teeth.
Yep.
And that's a daily thing, 2 people.
Operation of them is probably a 2-person job anyway, would that be right?
It usually is, Mr Mayor, you've got an operator and you'll have someone walking along,
The walker.
you know, test your moisture, your soil and whatnot. Keep that going for you, it's usually a 2-person job.
Right. Councillor Gleeson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Good machine, great machine, but we have a machine owned by a contractor in our area. The carting of the machine, unless we have discussed about looking at a wider float, we need a bigger wider float to cover the machine around. The operating of the machine has got to be operated by somebody that knows what they're doing. The maintenance of the machine, they're huge maintenance. And not only that, is the education of the grader driver behind that machine. Otherwise, every time the machine starts, they push the dirt forward. Every time they finish, they carry the dirt forward. If you haven't got a decent operator, every 100 metres, every 200 metres, when they start to stop, you've got a divot in the road. And it's proof down here on the Capricorn Highway, just this side of Jericho, where they had to stabilise there, used by the contractor with council operators that weren't trained to operate the graders correctly. Every 300 metres there's divots in the road. So thank you.
Just for your information, councillor, too, just remember that even though there is one operating in the council area, there is a contractor here with it. We actually have to provide the staff member to run it. We're paying for that person now. Haven't been for the whole time of this, but certainly in the last 12 months we have been. Councillor Peebles.
Well, Mr Mayor, as in past discussions, I'm very much in favour of one of these, mainly due to discussions I've had with other councils. And they look at this piece of land as probably one of the first pieces of land they look at buying. And from a couple of those councils that I've spoken to, and I respect greatly, they believe that this is a machine well worth having.
Right, so, yes,
Through you, Mr Mayor, just want to clarify, Councillor Gleeson was talking about the transporting it, because this is the 4M, the RM 400. It was I thought we'd had something that would cut one of these, but the 500 actually needs a big wide, like it's, the 500 is the one that needs the extra wide load, whereas I thought the 400, we did have the capacity to carry that.
no, I don't think so. No, you would shake your head.
Marginally, but yeah, no, it's not.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be, you know, what would you say, a comfortable position with what we've got on the edge, put it that way.
See, the actual drum width of the 4 and the 500 is the exact same. But you can dig to the same depth and the same width as a 500. The only difference is the horsepower driving it. And this version has the upgraded electronic suite, the ability to interface and perhaps lower the need for, like as in have a remote operator, so the person following can operate instead of, so that those are options that they wouldn't currently roll out now, but over the life of that machine could be rolled out. So whereas the 500's the older traditional model, will always need 2 people operating it, but do no deeper and wider paths. So the actual overall with the machine, and remember from that Hastings briefing, there's actually nominal weight difference. It is lighter.
I thought you did say that.
Yep, it's lighter. You would need a bigger float to take a 500 in tonnage wise than you will a 400, but you'll still need a bigger float than we have to move the 400.
Yeah.
We need 30 tonne.
And all right, so I've got 3 clearly in favour. Councillor Plum, are you in favour of proceeding?
Yes.
So it's 4 side. Sorry, councillors, I'm not sure which side of the on or off fence, but I've got enough to go to the next level of the conversation now, because how do we do it? How do you want to finance it? Do you want to buy it outright, or do you want to proceed, which you can do, like the resolution's recommending this. The prices are all there to go the other way. Bob, you just want to quickly talk to any options, because you've done a lot of this. Is there anything you want to add to the rent buy?
Just a little, what would you say? I haven't done the crunching of the numbers heavily, but just in the ballpark figure to break even on this current scenario, we're going to have to work it probably around in a 12-month basis, somewhere between 80 to 100 days. Having in mind that we've probably spent 30-something days on average renting one at the moment. So you're looking at about 80 to 100 days per year at about $5,500 a day.
Bob, the report we've got shows us around 67 days a year for the last 3 years.
Yeah, sorry, yeah.
So we're looking
we're looking at getting that up to about 80 if we owned it. If we can get 80 days out of it on current, what would you say, and expected work, flood damage, or main roads side of things. But yeah, that's to break even and to look at the $26,000 a month, 9%.
So Mr.
Costing you could.
So what about if we rented it out like that?
Well, that's paying for everything. Rent, not costing anything to
No, so councillor was asking if we were to rent it, so say Longridge needed a road construction job and they would hire our machine with an operator. Yes, that'd be full external revenue, but you still have operating costs. But yes, you could. It'll have a fee to charge the same in our line item to hire that as it would be to hire a grader or a truck or a mower or a.
So
it'll be expensive.
That would be additional days on top of what?
Well, they could help make that up.
Yeah.
If required. Any 80 to 100 days is what Bob's saying is the figure you need to get to, especially when you put as councillors Gleeson and Director of Works.
But I haven't really crunched the numbers on what it would cost to actually run per hour with those engaging tools.
The thing is, the engaging tools cost though can be added in to cover them, can be added into the hourly hire fee, even if it's an internal charge, because it's a wearing component. So let's just use round figures. Say we're going to spend $100,000 on gauging tips over a 12-month period, and it's going to do 1,000 hours. Well, you add $1 an hour for, which is ridiculous. I'm just using round figures, but whatever the ground engaging tools are per hour, is calculated into the hourly fee, so that even if it's an internal recovery, you're still covering that component. That wouldn't be out of order. Bob? Eric?
You're pretty close.
This one covers full servicing where if we bought outright, we have to service that stuff.
2 years.
Yes. Shane just made a very important point there that this price does include the servicing other than the ground engagement. If we purchase outright, the responsibility for maintenance costs is then borne fully by council. So if I can just add a little, well, actually no, I won't influence until we get to the end. I'll let you all have your say. Councillor Gleeson, your preference for buy outright versus rent buy?
Rent buy. If rent buy, the rent buy, Mr Mayor, is 26 per month for a period of 24 months. And then after that 24 months, there is the
option to buy.
567,000.
567.
It's $1,005,000 new.
Free, Mr Mayor. Well, if at the end of that rent period, we have the option to buy it, is there another option just to give it back to them and rent a new one, like rent the next?
Yep.
Yeah.
There's no obligation to buy per se.
Yeah.
Councillor Hanson, I know you had your hand up, sorry.
Just curiosity, if we were to buy it outright, as Bob said, it was 1.5 million. But if we'd left that 1.5 million in our bank account, the interest on that would quite possibly cover all that, if not a fair percentage of it.
You read my mind, Councillor. Cash in the bank is king. Yes, that's a valid point. Councillor Plum? Are you preferencing buying or renting?
Oh, renting.
Through Mr Mayor, the officer's recommendation is to rent the rent buy option. That's, I agree with that.
So councillors, looks like we're in agreement, but I just want to point out a couple of things. At the moment, we've got a committed QRA funded flood damage work that by the time this arrives is going to have 16 to 18 months left to run, because this, unlike everything else, is actually going to turn up very quickly. As in, like, weeks. It's in Australia already. It's another thing I didn't disclose until it looked like it was right. If we don't buy this today, it'll be in Richmond within a fortnight. So, and then we'd be waiting probably 12 months for the next one. So I didn't want that to influence your decision, but that's the reality of it. What are you laughing about, Councillor?
It probably does.
Well, it doesn't now, because four of you have said you're going to buy it. So I'll wait. So we've got committed millions of dollars of work where we can use this very quickly and get a handle on all of the things that Councillor Gleeson said and the Director of Works has said. I'm not blind to the fact that this will be a significant operational change internally. There's HR costs, there's safety procedures, there's a whole manner of things that it would be much better to integrate when someone else was paying, if I can be so bold. If we were buying this where we had no flood damage, no TMR works forecast, we were back in the situation we were in 16-17, I would be still just as keen, because I think they're a good piece of kit, but I'd be nervous about the fact that that 80 to 100 to 150 hours a year is going to come directly out of our rural road maintenance budget and perhaps be a bit tough. But if we can spend the next 12 months after we acquire it, 18 months doing flood damage plus TMR works, it gives us a good operational base to establish its ongoing viability in our fleet, or in our plant, as well as within our workforce. Can we sustain maintaining operators for this? Can we improve the skill level of our grader drivers to reflect the full usage of these machines? They're all questions to be answered. I firmly believe we can, but we still have to see that done. The other thing is that the federal government's infrastructure review in the last couple of days has completely affirmed, locked, sealed and delivered the road works for the $180 million to upgrade the Capricorn Highway between Emerald and Alpha, which is a substantial portion of which is ours. So that's the ROSI funding in the Central Corridor. And it's also completely confirmed the Beef Roads program, which is Clermont Alpha, Alpha Tambo. Those projects now are no longer ifs, they will happen. And on top of that, they've improved the Roads to Recovery, which will be named by a new program but it's the same program with an extra $100 million over the next 4 years. So the current program is due to expire in the 24-25 financial year, Jenny, is that right? Roads to Recovery? The current,
Next year.
yeah, so the new one that kicks in 25-26 will have
Mr. Mayor.
it's this year, right. So the new one, where we were uncertain whether there's any R2R, will come out with an improved, with a bigger allocation for all councils by the tune of $100 million. So the discretionary use of roads to recovery on council roads, on state roads is significant. TMR has been in substantial conversations with us around Aramac Barcaldine. We have got the TIDS job on the Barcaldine Aramac Road to the tune of about $2 million in 24-25. And they're looking to continue providing the funds to ensure the continued widening of that road so that it's full width the entire journey. So what I've just outlined is a program of works going to happen in and around our council area, funded by others, without roads to recovery, to the tune of about $160 million. If ever we are in a situation to try an expensive acquisition, it is right now. If we can't make this pay over the 2 or 4 years of this, we will never make it pay. So whilst I do note, and we'll put on the record, there has been some reluctance from some of our operational staff to step into one of these. I respect that advice, but I still would respectfully like to try it. And if we don't try it now, you'll never try it with a hope of recovery. So I know that the room was pretty well convinced, but I do think those comments need to be put on, that we're not buying this purely to undertake a $2.5 million rural road maintenance job every year. You know, this is a major piece of kit that in every one of those road construction jobs will be required. We will be hiring one if we don't buy one. So I think, as reluctant as some of our operational staff may be, I really think that this is the time to try this, and the option to rent by negates the budget risk and doesn't blow our capital budget this year at all, because we won't be capitalising this purchase. Dan, can you advise me that that's right? This rental agreement won't be a capital item, is that right?
Because you're renting it and we have full control of the asset, yes, we do have to align it on our capital, in our asset register as a right of use asset.
So does that then mean that we depreciate it as well? Obviously.
There's a depreciation allocation assigned to it. You say recorded at value, and then the depreciation over the life of it is depreciated, yes. So it is recognised and will have an impact.
So even though we're paying for it at $26,000 a month, if we acquire this month, it's going to put $1 million asset on our books straight away.
Yeah, there's an in and an out, sort of, with that money being adjusted, that rent payment being taken into consideration as well. But there is an operational impact and also an impact on our balance sheet as well.
Only in local government can we go and buy $1 million. Can we acquire $1 million asset, not spend $1 million, so the cash is still at bank, and our balance sheet just shows you a misleading position there.
It's an asset that we have full control of. Because we didn't buy it outright is sort of the null point in this. It's an asset that we have full control of. I suppose the reason this came about was this standard come about was in relation to Qantas Airways and other airlines that rent and lease all their aircraft. So they have billions of dollars worth of aircraft in the air that are weren't on anyone's balance sheet. Not the person that owns it and was leasing it, and not the business that was leasing it either. So that's where this comes about. So there is some adjustments we need to do on the back end, and it will have an impact.
So there's no difference between renting or leasing, it's considered the same?
That's correct, yeah.
Is there a liability attached to it? Yeah.
No, there's no additional liability because the cash, that's where we'll have to get Andrew in here to give the full detail. So that might be how it is offset, yes, on the balance sheet. as the liability because we have that $26,000 a month to pay, and that's where the offset is.
Yeah, plus not only the 26,000 a month to repay, Dan, we've also got the $567,000 asset we immediately lose control of at the expiration of the 2 years. So that figure's got to sit there as a liability as well.
No, because we don't have an obligation to pay that. We don't need to, no.
No, but we're obligated to lose the asset. We're obligated to lose the asset, which is the same difference.
Yeah, so that adjustment is not a liability because we're not obligated to pay it. So if there was a...
Sorry, it's not, sorry Dan to cut you off, it's not a liability, but it is an impairment on the asset.
That's correct, yeah.
So how's that impairment recognised?
I'll take that on notice, Mr. Mayor.
I don't think it's not material to this decision, but it is going to be material to our finances about how we account for it. But like, if the asset's coming onto our books, which I take clearly it's going to have to, but it is genuinely impaired not only by the 26,000 a month we paid, but by the fact that, yes, you're right, we're not obligated to pay the 567, but we will lose the asset if we don't pay the 567. Like it's a guaranteed will not be there in 2 years without us paying $500,000 for it. So somehow, even if it's a note in the financial statements around the impairment of that asset, a bit like we've had to do with flood damaged roads and the impairment you've put there, and I know you've adjusted some of that into operating, but there's still that capital impairment there, isn't there?
No capital impairment. We didn't do that this year because we took the view that with the flood damage, we're getting a reval done, so whatever adjustment we were doing as a result of that was going to get picked up in the reval. But yes, in normal years where you didn't have a revaluation, you would do an impairment because of the flood damage event that we had in January.
Okay. All right. Does anyone have any further questions or comments about the option as it's presented? Councillor Gleeson. Councillor Gleeson, I'm here.
Yes. Sorry.
You've got a question for him, do you?
Yeah, I want to ask the question. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Dan, mainly to Dan, but we were advised, a couple of years ago, we were advised that if you got the cash, you pay for things for cash. I've always been under the influence that whether you got the cash or not, you possibly should lease buy. Dan, what's figures-wise, if you got the cash, should you use the cash or should you lease buy?
It's a catch-22, I think, a little bit, councillor. While it's more of a, there's pros and cons with purchasing it outright versus the cost if it was leased. The one exposure that it does I suppose manage from a risk perspective is that by us leasing it after 2 years, we paid an amount for an asset and then can get rid of it, no questions asked, at a lot without having to pay any more. If we buy one and for some reason it's a lemon or something like that, we've got to live with that and then dispose of that at whatever price the market is giving us at that time. So that's a pro from a lease perspective. Buying it outright, obviously you don't have the interest component of the repayments. You don't need to take that into consideration. So it's a balancing act. Councillor, having the money in the bank, we are receiving interest. We're certainly not receiving 9.2% though, but it would be some way of seeing it being more around the 3 to 4% interest net that we'd be paying by having that money in the bank account.
One more question, I think you answered it a while ago, but the depreciation starts on the full value of the machine the day that we start the contract?
That's correct, yes. Yep.
Well,
so it's actually like a supercharged depreciation because it's only for 2 years, and so the value of the machine outright means we're depreciating that $250,000, or about $250,000, that $500K. That's depreciating in value over 2 years because it's going from the $1 million what you could pay for it in cash to the $567,000. So you're depreciating that in 2 years. So it's slightly supercharged from what you would normally do, which is depreciate maybe the stabiliser over a useful life of 6 to 8 years, for example, or something.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, just another little point, I suppose, is, and Dan, correct me if I'm wrong, when you say paying cash, if we were paying cash for vehicles specifically for council use where we are paying the bill, yeah, I would always go 99.9% of the time we pay cash for it. But when you've got something that is paid for under a program which is not council money and it's purely, and it's recoverable, then that's what you can do. You have the flexibility. But if it's just purely for council works and funded by council and ratepayers, definitely not.
Yeah, agree with you, Bob. The aspect of it is that the bit that is recoverable, we're including that interest into the unit rate that we're charging. So yes, that would be correct. While it's being used on that recoverable, if we're using it on a council project that's not funded, though, we are then having that full value charged to that project. So while it's on those recoverable work projects, yeah, certainly less impact to us.
All right. Councillor Peoples moves.
No, I've got some questions, Mr Mayor. With regards to looking at the payments, when you have a look at what we paid out to outsource one at the moment, we're looking at about 330,000 a year, so that covers the 624, because we don't have to pay that anymore.
I'm sorry, I'm lost.
Well, when you have a look at the yellow pages,
Yeah,
we're paying 330 a year,
correct.
and it's not even 3 years. So that's 330,
actually.
close to 3. That 330 a year meets the 624 we're going to pay for the next 2 years. So, because we don't have to pay that covers that. The only other question I'd ask, Dan, what is the interest rate with QTC now compared to the 9.2% that we're paying Hastings?
About 4.7, I think.
So
I think it's noted in the report, it's 4.7 or 4.8%. It's actually decreased in the last 2 months. So officers are currently looking at some term deposits to get some better interest rates, because we believe that we should be able to get somewhere north of 5.
yeah,
I don't think.
Yeah, currently QTC it is at well under 5%.
okay, but is that for term deposit or is that for if we want to borrow and purchase? It'd be a bit more.
Oh, to borrow.
Yeah.
I don't have I'll have to take that on notice, councillor. I don't have the
I
interest
thought it'd
rate.
be about 6%. It'd definitely
Yeah.
bit more
Between, I'd say 9 and 10.
with QTC.
Oh, not with QTC,
Not
no,
with
if you're
QTC.
borrowing, no, you'd be in the 5s to 6s, I would suggest.
We were dearer than that with our last loan. We were 5.6 last time we borrowed 2 years ago.
Was it?
Where's the?
Oh, no,
No, that we
That's the only question I'd have, Dan, is the comparison of what QTC would be presently compared to the 9.2 that Hastings are chasing.
The only thing I'd say there, councillor, I know where you're going, like it might be cheaper financially to borrow the money and buy it, but then you don't have the option of giving it back in 2 years.
Agreed.
And the maintenance.
Yep, no, that sort of
Valid point.
balances it out a fair bit, yeah.
And they could be a bit reluctant on the services and that little more.
Well, that made that point, yeah.
Budget. I'll check. I'd hate to mislead the record on mine. So when we borrowed 2 years ago, it was 4.646, and that was when interest rates were at like less than, yeah, you'd be well north of 5%
Yeah, I agree.
to borrow the money.
I don't think we'd be 9, that's all. But
No,
with the other benefits that you get with Hastings Deering, I can understand us paying a bit more.
And we need to seek approval to do it.
Yes.
We need the Treasurer's consent to do that because we're, and that's what I wanted to add about there.
Might take your borrowing policy to.
Well, that's right, the budget statement said we weren't going to borrow any money this year, so we'd have a whole host of resolutions to amend if we were to do that. Right, any further questions? Do I have a mover? Councillor Plum, a second, and Councillor Henderson. Debate? Those in favour? 6-0. Adjourned for morning.